Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our next live session. I'll be your producer for our session, but before we start, I do have some quick housekeeping. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. While we absolutely encourage engagement in the chat, we ask that you please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional and on topic. Keep an eye on that chat. We'll be dropping helpful links and checking for questions for our presenters to answer. Our session is being recorded. It will be available to view on demand right here on the Microsoft Reactor channel. With that, I'll turn it over to our speaker for today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Anne. We are incredibly excited to be here today, and we couldn't time this event any better because today is when we are announcing the SRE agent is generally available. And with that, a quick introduction. Dalibor, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Shamir. And hello, everyone. I'm Dalibor. I'm a Principal Product Manager with the SRE Agent team. And over to you, my friend.
Thanks, Dalibor. And I'm Shamir Abdulaziz. I'm a Principal Product Manager too on the SRE Agent team. So today we're going to talk about what the SRE Agent is. I'm not sure how many of you have already heard about it or used it before, but the Azure SRE Agent is an AI-powered operations agent that helps you reduce your operational toil no matter where it is. So with that, let's get started.
All right. So I have our blog post here, Shamir. I think my screen is being shared right now. And so for folks...
Anna, could you get back to the slides, please? Yeah. Thank you. Perfect. All right, cool. Sorry for that glitch, but we are back. So like I said, the SRE agent is an AI-powered operational agent, and you can do a bunch of things with it. You can diagnose and analyze issues. We do Azure very well because we have built-in tools for Azure like AZCLI, kubectl, and ARM API calls that allows us to inquire and investigate Azure resources. We also allow you to respond to incidents. So we connect with PagerDuty, ServiceNow, and Azure Monte alerts that allow you to trigger the SRE agent on demand and respond to it reactively. We also allow you to configure scheduled tasks that allow you to monitor and report things like you can do health check, you can do anomaly detection, you can send cost analysis reports or deployment analysis reports to your management. And finally, the SRE agent is also a great thing. It learns in what you do. So when you interact with it, when it responds to an incident and so on and so forth, it's going to learn continuously from that knowledge and be better prepared when it has to solve the issue the next time. There are three ways to use the SRE agent, and I touched upon that in a bit, right? I talked about that you can chat with the SRE agent. So much like any other co-pilot, you can go to the SRE agent portal and you can type in questions. You can ask how your web app is doing, or what's the status of your AKS cluster. You can investigate issues. So you can interact with it on the chat. You can also respond to it when incidents come in. PagerDuty or ServiceNow is supported. And proactively, you can configure scheduled tasks. We'll talk about each of it one by one. So in the interactive experience, Dalibor, if you could just show the chat window, how it looks like, and maybe chat with it for a sec.
Sure. All right. So this is a agent that we're going to demo some things, but let me zoom out a little bit. And so this one's fully set up. Part of the blogs that we're going to announce, we have kind of how to get the most out of the agent, setting up and onboarding your app and your resources and your all the things that Shamir basically mentioned. And so this one's kind of set up, and so I'm able to just ask it about things, and it doesn't just do the typical LLM thing, which just makes up whatever world knowledge it has. It actually is grounded in this exact app, which is a real thing that I have to maintain. Back to you, my friend.
Awesome, Dalibor. Thank you for that. So that's how you can interact with the SRE agent. I'll touch upon the key capabilities of the SRE agent. It is multi-resource, it's multi-subscription, so you could connect it to your multiple subscriptions in your tenant, and you can manage multiple subscriptions or resource groups. We have a code sandbox, so we are able to write code and execute code at will in a secure and automated way. In research preview, we also have browser operator, where you can use the browser operator to interact with web pages when you don't have an API or a tool for the SRE agent to respond. And we also are great at producing artifacts, so we can generate PDFs and PPTs that is useful for reporting. And since this is an Azure product, you can expect all the best security and managed identity and RBAC capabilities out of the box. The next up, what we want to talk about is the incident response. And for incident response, over to you, Dalbo. Could you just show how you can configure an incident trigger?
Absolutely. So for that one, it depends on your platform, right? Like Shamir was saying. So for this particular one, we have the Azure Monitor, and I have a specific incident trigger, a response plan, I should say, that fires, for this example, on all the severities. It queries all the Azure Monitor triggers, and the way that looks is if something goes bump in the night, you basically get one of these little ones, and it triggers, and you can kind of see like what it figured out. And so this would be kind of one of the actual live demos when we set this up. But yeah, this one mitigated the thing that I kind of broke intentionally with another agent. So it's kind of fun having the two agents correlate with each other.
Thank you, Dalbo. All right, the next thing that we want to talk about is scheduled task. Now, scheduled task is something you configure on a timed interval, so you can have it as frequent as you want, or as like once a week or once an hour. And it can do things like, checking the health of your critical resources. So think of a scenario where you don't want it to wait for telemetry to come in and then fire an incident and then react. You could constantly monitor this, and then based on regressions or any changes in thresholds, it can automatically respond to it and maybe restart the service or scale up or scale out the service. So that's what you can do with scheduled tasks. That's not the only thing, though. You could do reporting, because we have, like I said, you can create PPT files or PDF files. It can analyze your security vulnerabilities or the deployments that you had, or look at the costs, and then periodically send reports to your management. So for that, Dalbo, could you quickly show how that looks like?
Yeah, for sure. So this particular web app that we're going to go through is an actual sample app, and we get GitHub issues. And so the way I actually use this for my own personal stuff is like I created a scheduled task, and if there's a GitHub issue that's open against the sample repo, this thing runs, checks it out, and it even fires off an email. And so and the best part is I didn't have to do really any work. I just kind of conversationally talked to the agent and said, hey, go do this thing for me. And this is a nice email. And so every once in a while I get pinged and I just kind of act on it. And there's more ways to automate it, but this is just to illustrate the point of what Shamir's saying is you don't have to wait around for things to break or get ignored.
Thank you. Super cool, Dalbo. All right. So we are out of the box great at many things, especially Azure. You just, connect us to your subscription, and we'll be able to investigate issues, figure out what's going on and things like that. But we quickly realized that this particular space is very fragmented, and we will need to work with many different systems and tools for us to be able to completely automate your toil. And with that in mind, we designed SRE Agent as extensible right from day one. So the first piece to that puzzle is MCP connectors. We support MCP servers, and you can bring in your MCP server or third-party MCP servers to connect the SRE agent to tools that's outside the SRE agent's built-in context. You can also bring in data connectors, and we realize context is everything, and Dalbo is going to explain about that in a little while. But when you bring up context, Observability is one such context, and we provide you a MCP way of bringing in data from other data sources. But natively, we support application insights and Azure Monitor. We also have connectors to Outlook and Teams for communication, and you can bring in other connectors for other systems that you want. We also support GitHub and DevOps for all your code-related infrastructure work. The next thing that we want to touch upon is Python Code Sandbox. So it's great to be able to bring tools from other systems. But what if you don't want to bring in an MCP server and you have an API endpoint and you want to write a tool for that? You could write a Python code tool within the SRE agent itself. And the coolest thing here is you don't have to write the code yourself. You just chat with it and it'll generate the code for you. And that becomes a tool for SRE agent to use in a future interaction. We also enable HTTP triggers. And HTTP triggers is a way to trigger the SRE agent from an external system. Natively, we already support ServiceNow, PagerDuty, and Azure monitors. But if there's a system outside that you want to call the SRE agent to, you could use HTTP triggers. We also have hooks. Hooks is a way to control what the agent is doing. And we allow you to create prompt hooks and command hooks that allow you to stop the processing of the SRE agent or decide what to do next based on conditions. So hooks is super powerful to give you that kind of flexibility and governance. And the final piece of the puzzle is knowledge resources. Getting observability platforms and other data sources is important, but your own internal knowledge, your own company's business processes, those are really critical pieces of assets for the SRE agent to know how to do things better. And the more context you give the SRE agent, the better it becomes.
All right. Shamir, if I just saw our first question here, and it's, I'll just interrupt you, but we can answer it quickly since we're on the topic, but it's, how are the SRE agents' rights managed? And so just to what it can do. The short answer is SRE agent is an actual Azure resource. So it basically has managed identity. And that managed identity, it's provisioned when you create it. And during the onboarding process, you'll see basically, but all the things that it has access to is whatever you grant it permissions to. And so it's not mysterious. It's not magic. It's just literally plain old primitives of Azure.
And that's just a level one of the security pieces that we have. We have many more levels, and we can share the blog on how all of that comes together to ensure that you have a very well-governed agent for you. Right. Thanks for that question. Keep them coming in. I'll move us along. The next thing that we want to talk about as part of GA is this brand new onboarding experience. And I'll not show the slide here. I'll ask my friend Albert to share his screen and show this absolutely amazing new context engineering onboarding experience we have.
Yeah. So we basically, as we were trying to work towards GA and we were working with customers, we found that and even ourselves internally, that AI solutions, AI products struggle if you don't onboard. It's kind of like, imagine you hired the smartest person in the world, but you basically didn't tell them where the source code is, didn't give them permissions to anything, and didn't train them on anything. They might be able to figure out something useful, but if you give them a proper onboarding, it works a lot better. And so this is our new UI. So when you've created a nice new SRE agent, so hello Reactor here, we kind of walk you through what we think is a good combination of things. And so, for example, you can create and connect to your GitHub. And so you're going to be able to authorize it. And at that point, I probably shouldn't have used that one. You can go in and actually set up your connection, be able to authorize the SRE agent to be able to connect to that repo. And so, for example, the next thing would be this particular web app that I already set up. And we can add that repository. And now when that SRE agent starts thinking about things, it has the key to the puzzle, which is basically the source code, which makes the great experience or the bad experiences that every customer of any piece of software basically goes through. And so we can kind of go through that in another step, or do you want me to just kind of go through through this one, Shamir, to a natural.
Maybe just do logs, and then we can go through the remaining details later.
Yeah. So the other one is, for example, Gusto. That's your choice, and you have all these other providers. And so we have a lot of partnerships. We worked hard with all these folks to make sure this is a good experience, whether it's through MCP or other custom integrations. And so for the most part, it's this particular flow. You add a URL, you test the connection. Obviously, this is going to fail, but at the end of the day, you're going to get something like this over here, where you can actually have that connection set up. And so I'll just kind of leave it at that. And so those two little check marks, you basically can kind of see when you come to the chat. So if anything is not set up during that initial phase, you actually can come here. You'll see all these. If you've connected them, you can actually see what they're doing, or you can reset them up if you weren't able to do it the first time. Because, like right now, I don't know the URL for my Custo, and so I would have to look it up. And so it makes for a funny demo, but like literally that's why we designed it, because we know that not everything is going to be available on the first go. So once you do that, you basically connect which tools you want to actually make the agent have access to, right? So if there are certain things that you don't want it to do, Custo is pretty benign. Most things are all read here, as you can tell. But let's say there's an MCP server that has something like, I don't know, change my something, some write operation. You can choose, again, to Shamir's point earlier, not to give it that tool, right? You can make sure that it doesn't have the permissions to do it with, RBAC type limitations. But if somebody messes it up, you can still further guard it by just not giving the agent that tool. And so we'll just kind of hand wavy that one through.
Thanks, Dalibor. All right. So, one thing that we realized over the course of designing the SRE agent experience is the more context you provide, the better it becomes. And what Dalibor just showed you is how just by simply adding your source code and your logs provide the SRE agent a lot of context to be able to automatically debug the issues you might see come your way. And don't be worried. Your source code is always protected by a PR or a merge, right? So even if the SRE agent gets write access, which you can prevent for it to have access to, but you'll always be able to control the pushes to a code base using PR and merge processes. And then this is another cool thing, that truly personalized SRE agent for every team's use cases. So in here, what we do is we start with the chat thread. Once you finish setting up the onboarding experience Dalibor talked about, we invite you to a thread where we ask to get to know you. We ask things about what do you do, and how do you work with this particular product, what is important to you. And it is building this team profile that it can later use as knowledge to keep this memory in store, so that it knows how to deal with certain situations in the future. So today, say for example, Dalibor did something, it's going to learn that, and then tomorrow when I am asking a question similar to what Dalibor asked, it's going to use the knowledge that Dalibor gave it to it, and use that as a context to be able to make a decision. Dalibor, I don't know, you have getting to know you thread. Do you have the team profile thread? Oh, cool.
Yeah,
then go ahead and show that. Let's show what it looks like.
Yeah, for sure. When basically you complete that other onboarding flow, the first thing that you get is basically like a welcome thread. And so if you could just do my screen, please. Thank you. So this is kind of what your welcome thread is going to look like. And I'll even trigger it over here, and we'll just say we're done. And it's basically going to land you on this welcome page. And it's going to ask you a question. This is a UI thing that we're going to polish up, but for the most part, it's the onboarding process. And so not to watch LLM actually process that or write that up, I'll just kind of show you a completed one here. It basically asked that question, started wanting to know about me. I literally just asked, it's like, hey, tell me about my, query these logs, right? To test how the onboarding flow went, right? Because I basically, in this particular example, I did everything. I gave it repo, I gave it proper logs, and I told it like, hey, go run some queries and see what's going on there. Started doing the queries. And now the point of this is like, you can do many conversations. You can do something casual, like, hey, I'm the product manager of this web app. and or this other bit that I want you to know about. But for me, I just kind of went hardcore since I've been working on this for a while, and I just told it, like, go do a thing that I need you to do. And by virtue of that, these things, get executed by the agent. It gets data back. It found out that, hey, during this session, like, hey, I don't have permissions. I was like, okay, cool. I granted you permissions, right? And you can get it to basically grant the permissions itself, and it will just do an on behalf flow where you just hit approve here. And so it kind of literally went through and learned about the app and looked at the source code. And I kind of kept on having conversations with it to the point where I have institutional knowledge kind of baked into it, right? I even told it kind of like, go triage the issues for this GitHub issue. And it was like, okay, great. Let me look at the open issues and so forth. Since this is, kind of laying down the foundation for it, there's other ways to get this information in there, but I use the welcome thread just to kind of like get it going. And to what Shamir was saying, like, it starts creating these teams.md. It's very simple. We're, using, at the end of the day, primitives that you are going to see in VS Code and GitHub Copilot, CLI, Cloud Code, whatever it is, right? So, but the way this is orchestrated, it's just in the cloud, ready to basically solve your operational needs. And so it's pretty fun to just see it do these things. And so you can kind of come to this welcome screen, this Teams chat, or you can upload knowledge, or honestly, depending on how disciplined you are with your repo and how your code is structured, it's just going to be able to read that as well, because it clones that down and it's able to like process it just like you would. And so many ways of doing it, but this one is a very intuitive, you can do this without having a repo kind of way. So we want to meet you wherever you are in your journey, right, to be able to get value out of the system. So back to you, Shamir.
Thank you, Dalibor. So basically what we did there, Dalibor, is making tribal knowledge institutional knowledge, right? Cool. Mm-hmm. There are a bunch of questions in the chat. So let's see, which one do you want to pick? I'll take...
the first one is, I think the one that we haven't talked about is the model. We use two model providers. We use Anthropic, and we also use OpenAI. So you have those are the two models on the back end that we use, the model providers. So nothing proprietary. Let's see here.
Cool. What observability for SRE agent is there? I think that's a two-part question. Our telemetry gets into application insights automatically, so you'll be able to monitor SRE agent from there. And if you're talking about observability from different platforms, we support application insights, Azure Monitor as of now. And for any other data provider, we have MCP connectors. So Datadog, Dynatrace, Splunk, all of that, we have an MCP connector.
Yeah, we had pretty nice sessions during Ignite with our partners from, I think, Datadog and I think Dynatrace. So premium
cool.
Experiences.
All right, we'll take a few questions a little later.
Okay.
And this is just adding on what Dalibor just showed, and we talked about context engineering, right? So in the onboarding experience, we ask you your code repositories, we ask you your log sources, you can upload your knowledge resources, and we also get to know you. And now what we're doing is setting the foundation for SRE agent to learn. Every interaction you have with the SRE agent, whether it's a chat thread, or is it a response to an incident or a scheduled task, or if you do hash remember to store something you want the agent to remember for future, or you're uploading knowledge resources. This all is contextual information that the SRE agent is using to continuously learn and reuse. So all of that, you chat with it, all the interaction it did, next time it's going to use that to become better. So the same issue that it might have taken 3 minutes to solve earlier could be solved probably in 30 seconds because it has rich contextual information about how those things are done. With that, I think I'll ask Dalibor to take over and show a cool demo of how you can get SRE agent to work with your DevOps.
Yeah, so what I'm going to demo, or at least show off a little bit today, is this particular app that I own. So it's a sample app for the Microsoft Foundry agent service. And so I created this whole thing where you can basically create your own web app. supposed to be easy and agentic, so you don't really even have to know what's going on. But the burden of writing code is you have to maintain it. And so internally, it's funny enough that we actually use SRE for our own live site. So we have this thing called SRE for SRE, where our own engineering team and PM team use the product to make sure that our issues are solved. And if somebody opens up an escalation or we regress something, and all the best practices that we have are basically being assisted or entirely mitigated by the SRE agent. And so, but for this particular one, like I actually have real pain, which is, I put this thing out in the world and now I have to maintain it. And so we get issues, we get all these things. And so the way I wanted to kind of demo this is this particular fully finished SRE agent and this particular app that's connected to it. And so going back to that onboarding process, I'll just kind of quickly go back to the new chat experience and just walk everybody through. So I connected to the repository, which is this one here, right? So that's a public repository. Anybody has access to it. And so let's clean up some browsers here. The logs, I have Custo, and it's sort of proxying through Custo into the log analytics. The Azure Monitor is my incident platform. The Azure resources are the resource group that I've connected it to. And then I just have like a knowledge file that I just uploaded just to get all of the things green. But again, like I was saying, if your repo has all the knowledge, that's fine. If you want to upload your TSGs or index things, you can do all these things. And so the onboarding process, as I showed earlier, was after I did all these things, I started kind of talking to it. And one of the funny things is that I want to show everybody is after I basically got it onboarded, one of the first questions I did is just kind of to test it, right? What do you know about this thing? And it started literally going through and finding and executing AZCLI commands, finding out the data. And to what Shamir was saying, this becomes a session insight, right? So anything that you do with it has a chance to basically produce a useful memory. The other thing that we hold ourselves highly accountable for is the intent met score. So this is kind of how you can see these insights. As a backend system, we basically try to figure out with LLMs whether this was useful or not, right? And so we score ourselves and we keep ourselves accountable if this number dips as an engineering team, because it probably means that you're not having a good time, right? And so, but just kind of after setting it up, asking it something, it was able to figure out, literally, it's never seen my code. After I connected it, it's belonged through all of the complexity of that app, figured out how it works, and actually did a pretty good job. Like, it did a really good job. It's, again, the sample app, I don't want to use a bunch of your resources, your money. And so they did find these things. It wasn't necessarily, I didn't prime it to say this is a sample app, right? But it was actually pretty cool. So the next thing that I wanted to kind of demo here is going in, and I said, hey, I have all of these incident Azure monitors set up. And again, it's unaware of these things. And so the funny thing is it goes through the architecture diagram. It looks at the Copilot instructions and all the actual code and the things that are part of the repo. It pulls up a memory because, again, I have that markdown file that I included in there. It basically created a memory because it learned something right on the spot right there. And basically it helped me create an incident response plan, which I was showing you earlier, right? So like it just went through and I said, I have these Azure monitors and all those things were connected, and it's, kind enough to do these things. And I kind of iterated with it to basically create the actual Azure monitors, right? And so back to the incident that we were showing, this is how it triggered it. And so the demo that I'm going to show, or just kind of allude to, is an actual incident that was responded to that I induced with Copilot CLI here as just a developer. And so the tie back to what Shamir was saying.
Dalibor, so you're saying that you have configured Azure Monitor Alert to trigger the SRE agent? Is that how this is working?
Yeah. So basically, if I use the app like a normal person, I have basically like a dad joke agent under the Foundry. And if it has, for example, like actual performance issues, and the Chaos Monkey demo that I'm going to show you here is I basically use Copilot CLI, which is another AI, right, as my local dev. I basically told it to break the app in an arbitrary way. And then it triggered the alert. And so this is like the actual, because again, it's an LLM and it's not the most compelling thing to watch a mountain of text go by. But basically, it's a real app that I deployed in my resource that I'm using the product that we own to manage the Azure Foundry web app, which is hosted for real here. So this is like the actual agent that I created. It's just like the silly dad joke thing that I just ended up changing myself. And so like the actual app is deployed using that sample app, but then I'm actually monitoring it with the SRE agent. And then I'm using the full harness so that is in this app, because you can basically just go clone this app and just talk to it with Copilot CLI like I'm doing here in this terminal. And it will basically just like update the app, deploy it for you. And so in this situation, I just told Copilot CLI with, tongue in cheek, kind of like break it, put some bad code in, and it deployed it. And the SRE agent was like smart enough to actually suss out that somebody's messing with it. It found that it's me because it's using my identity. And so the best part about that was like, okay, in this one here, I'm just kind of like burying the lead, but like it found that I messed with it. And it was like chaos enabled, right? There's an environmental variable that I found. It found the Azure container registry image that I deployed, or like my AI bot did, right? And so it found it, it reverted it, which is like the right move. And so like it was full end-to-end cycles of like AI messing with AI and me just kind of like sitting back and watching it do its magic. And it was super fun to actually see that the SRE agent returned it. And the funny part was, I'll go back here again. It complemented the SRE agent. So Copilot with Claude 4.6 Opus, it was basically like, hey, like SRE agent was right. And it rolled it back. Good job. It's somewhere in here. So it's like, it actually has a play-by-play because I thought it was sort of funny and I wanted to show everybody. So you can imagine like reality, like Chaos Monkey is not probably an intentional thing, right? You probably shipped something and you would probably want, to catch all those bugs before you actually ship the code. But that's unfortunately not how the world works. And so in this situation, it was, the monitors and everything were instrumented in a generic way, performance, 500s, whatever those like typical things. But, it was able to catch it and roll it back because I gave it the right permissions. And so
wait a minute, Dalo, wait a minute. So this is like a real world Inception moment to me right now. AI doing AI. So let me just try and peel the layers. So what you've done there is you created an agentic app on Foundry, I guess, and then you have an Copilot CLI dynamically trying to break your app so that you can test real world scenarios using SRE agents built-in intelligence.
Yep.
Is that what you did?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I have a 3.5-year-old that demands a lot of my time. And so like, I can't be bothered to do these things. And so of course, we have infinite tokens for the most part. And so I just abuse that. And so I have AI doing all my stuff. So yeah.
Super cool. Yeah.
Yeah. It's literally, Inception, like to your point, like it's even funnier than that. So you're right. I didn't even notice the irony of like the 3 levels of depth. Like this is an AI product. I created a web app that you all could use, and then you can clone it. So you can use your own, AI tool of choice, right? This happens to be Copilot CLI, right? It could be VS Code or whatever. And so this is talking to a web app that it deploys that then gets to another AI service, and then another AI service is watching it. So it's like 3 levels at least of AI indirection. And like, I feel like the puppeteer. So it's sort of fun, but it's like realistic if you think about it. Like, whether it's AI or humans, at the end of the day, you want something that's not going to be sleepy, doesn't have a 3.5-year-old, that's going to require them to do stuff, right? To make sure things don't go bump in the night and catch the blind spots that you don't have. And so to tie back to reality, it's something we're proud of as a team. We're something that we use internally. And it's a huge thing inside of Microsoft for a lot of our biggest services. And so we're seeing like daily impact. And so folks are taking a dependency on us before we're even generally available. Again, bringing it back to the fact that we're GA and held us to a pretty high bar. And so, it's cool. It's real.
So when back to your app, so when Copilot breaks things, what do you get? You get an Azure Monitor alert?
Yep. Yeah. So When
Can you just show that piece, the alert, and then how it's being picked up by the SRE agent?
Sure. Let's go back here. So, because I was basically thrashing this thing, so I just kind of gave it one. So let me find the incident. So the way it looks is there's multiple incidents that were fired. And so if you look at this one, it has like a kind of a long thread because of the way it works. It would just keep handling all the incidents. But the way it would look like, and you can also obviously look at it from the actual Azure Monitor portal, but this is the actual incident that was fired, right? And this is the alert. Yeah. And so it's for real, right? And it's telling you which resource it's basically going against. It acknowledges the incident. It has this chain of thought. So that's kind of how we're doing the treatment for seeing what the model is thinking, right? It basically finds, okay, this is it. It found an alert. It's kind of going through based on what my conversation with it found, and also what's inside of the institutional knowledge based on our conversations and the threads that it was basically producing. It read the memory log, which it produced when it was interviewing me. It read the architecture diagram. It ran some actual queries to see what's going on, basically analyzed data. It found that this revision was messed with. There's a new revision because, again, when it did my initial thing, it was smart enough to literally go through and figure out like, hey, what is the actual state of this app, of this actual deployed thing? And now it's in this memory. And so now it can actually refer to those things. And it's just like, wait, like I couldn't even really trick it very easily because it's like it already knew enough about the environment. And so it just kind of keeps going through. And eventually you will see it just basically calls me out, right? This guy, Dakova, that's me, did a thing. And, oh, by the way, there's a deployment called Chaos, which, again, I didn't ask it that. It was literally I told it, like, just mess with the other SRE agent. And I can just scroll up to the other thread. And it went through, kept on investigating, looked at the commits, looked at the app insights, like, aha, found it. And so it found the variable. So then it literally, like, at some point in time, it basically ripped it out, the bad stuff, rolled back the image. It created some memory. So now I can't really trick it with the same tomfoolery as the first time. And so, yeah, that's how I did it. And that's what it could do.
Super awesome. So are you telling me this happened automatically? Did you have to write custom instructions for this? What is the setup? How did the SRE agent get triggered because of this alert? Can you show that first?
Sure. So this one is actually funny. By default, because I know where Shamir is leading me with that question, we actually have default response plans that could have caught it. But the funny thing was, because I was actually using Copilot CLI and I gave it playwright access to the agent, it actually created this response plan for me. And so, again, I don't do any work.
Level of Inception. Does this get any deeper?
It can. So the funny part was, like, I was kind of messing with it and it triggered the default response plan. But for whatever reason, Copilot CLI said, like, you know what, I think I can do better. And so it created these sets of instructions. So again, I didn't type any of these things. They just sort of used the tribal knowledge stuff that we made institutional by conversing with it. And it said, like, this is the app, this is the stuff, the support, everything basically kind of went all the way down to having that set of instructions. It helped pick the tools that it needed to. And then that's literally how it kind of went all the way through. So, like, you don't have to have AI 4 levels deep, like, making it for you. This is something that you can actually use our product to create your response plans. Like, so if you noticed in the previous page, like, it does a query against all of these, and we can actually create response plans based on your historic data, right? And we have some other delighter features that are coming post GA where we're going to basically try to learn from your incidents and provide response plans and other things that will automatically just be like a one button click. But for the most part right now, you can see these queries that are coming back for the actual incidents. And I zoomed in a little bit too much, so it's easier to see for small screens. But for the most part, it's like AI, again, taking what you've invested in, your Azure monitors, your code, all of those things together to keep your folks, your developers, your customers happy. So, like, if something really happens, it will trigger it. And then now that's ripe data for the SRE agent to be able to create a response plan automatically, or you can make your own by studying the data and then coming up with what Copilot CLI did for me on its own, because it's a nice product. So.
Awesome. So basically you're saying that you could guide the SRE agent based on either sub-agents or skills to give it probably loosely defined instructions through skills, or you could use prescriptive guidance in custom agents that will allow it to decide its thinking and its planning.
Yep.
Or you could also use SRE agent without giving any guidance, and then you're using the model's intelligence to do the planning.
Yep. Exactly. And to go back to what you said, not to bury the lead, having a model do everything is fine, right? But the fact is, code is very deterministic by design. And so this is where the Python tools, if you need something to happen like, regularly, consistently, you don't have to just basically say like, let's just throw it to the wind and hope the LLM does it consistently. You can pair it with hooks, you can pair it with the Python interpreter. And so, part of the instructions could be like, hey, use this tool. And that tool can literally be like, do a bunch of analysis, do all the queries so they're deterministically, and, pull it together. Like one of the, shout outs to one of our sister teams, Diagnose and Solve Blade in the Azure portal. Shamir and I come from that team as well. And so they have a bunch of the diagnostics inside of the Azure portal, right? If you look at Diagnose and Solve Blade, tons of content there. We're, internally, and I think even externally to some point, consuming those things. And so the idea there is there's a lot of ways you can leverage an LLM, but having it be deterministic is best paired with code. And so if you know something works really well, it's the ebb and flow. Like how much flexibility do you want to, how much intelligence do you want to exploit from the model, but how many of the things that you need the model to, think about need to be guaranteed that it can't just accidentally discover by relying on it. And so I just want to tie it back to those two things. And it's that combination, that awareness, that level of context engineering that really gets to what you want.
Really cool. Yeah. And that's how, Microsoft engineering teams are using SRE Agent today. They've been dogfooding our product for over 6 months. So if you know exactly what to do for a given kind of incident and you just want to automate it, you don't want to burn tokens for asking the SRE agent to, plan the entire thing before it can execute it. So we provide you these custom agents and skills that you can write in the SRE agent so that you can extend it to your liking. And basically think of these as tools to, give prescriptions to the SRE agent. So now you're telling the AI, here's a plan, here are the list of tools that you can use. Use this plan and tool to respond to the incident rather than you thinking on your own how to do it. Yep. However, if you want to investigate deep issues, issues that you haven't seen before, or there's not a proper run book, that's where you could use the SRE agent's built-in intelligence without giving it any guidance or very loose guidance, and tell it, okay, go ahead. Here's the source code. Here is the telemetry. Here are the resources. Here are my knowledge resources. Look at all of them and try and figure out what the problem is and investigate the issue. So both such possibilities are possible with the SRE agent.
Yeah. And so again, going back to this chaos monkey thing where I just sort of threw a wrench at SRE agent or Copilot CLI did with a simple prompt, another way of doing it, if you just put my, developer hat on, like imagine you have your staging environment, right? And you might have some access to it. And that you're doing certain things, but like a lot of the times wiring up AI solutions, whatever it might be, is a little bit hard, or maybe even your environment's locked down. But like, for example, in this situation, you can imagine, let's just say you wanted to gate the permissions that the SRE agent has, with managed identity being the backstop. And you, for example, wanted to give your developers the ability to like have AI help you with this particular app in certain ways. And so like the basic thing is, let's just say you don't trust your developers to have permissions like you have in prod to do anything that they want. And so you want to lock it down. And in this situation is maybe you just want them to be able to do a rollback of the image, right? For whatever it might be, right? And so in this situation, let's just say we architected the SRE agent just to be able to do that and gave people permissions to the SRE agents because it has its own RBAC. So you can have like reader or basically you can chat with it, right? And in this situation, I simulated the break again in the app, but I wanted to basically interactively talk to it. So there's the proactive where it's incident trigger. And then here I just said, like, what's the image in my web app? And it went through and it found what the actual image was. And it found that it came back to the chaos monkey thing again. And I just told it, let's move to the prior build. And it was able to go back. And so it's a bit of a contrived example, but the point is to just kind of articulate like how much flexibility and power and ease of use you have by knowing these systems and architecting these things, the SRE agent in particular. So you have like a very safe playground where you have an intelligence where you can have it do those preliminary investigations, help your developers kind of be efficient, but without necessarily giving a massive amount of permissions to somebody where they can inadvertently break it. And so there's a very interesting, play here to make developers' lives better as well, not just keeping the app up during the development process and along all those stages, going back to what you're saying, Shamir, with the whole DevOps concept, right? We want to shift left as far as humanly possible and do it with AI along all the checkpoints. So that way it's something that just adds value to your life. It removes toil. It removes just drudgery, if you will, and just get stuff done. Because I don't care about writing the best AZCLI command. I just want to answer my questions and how it's done. Like at this point, I don't care that much. I just, want it to be easy and accurate. And that's what we're really aiming for here.
Awesome. Dalba, I guess it's time for some questions. There are quite a few, so let me take one. The question is, do we get an option to select a model? Not currently. We decide what model is best for certain kind of operations, but in the future, we can see how you can probably select different models or bring your own model. Let's see, what other questions can we take? Okay, would it be possible to send requests to the SRE agent from another agent? So we do want to support agent-to-agent communication at a future time, but today you can trigger the SRE agent through HTTP triggers. So you can just call an API endpoint and you can trigger the SRE agent through an HTTP trigger.
And MCP is the answer to that as well. So there's many ways of so at the end of the day, AI is just a web service call, right? It's just some API. So not to trivialize it, but it's just an API call. So if you want to accomplish that, you can also do it with MCP as well. But we are exploring that actively.
All right, this is an interesting question, Dalbo. Will it suggest ways to prevent issues from occurring again, right? Yes, it will. As part of the chat threads that Dalba showed, you'd see recommendations not just to fix the issue, but also not how to have those issues in the future will be part of that recommendation.
Yeah, there's another question about, does it work basically hybrid cloud? And so the answer is yes. Through MCP, we are able to support hybrid cloud. We've had some folks use, I think, Dynatrace, and there's a lot of aggregations behind those services. So there, can be like a hub through a service like that. It could be an explicit, thing that you connect to. And so, yeah, we're not just an Azure shop, but we definitely work best with Azure because it's, hosted in Azure and we have a managed identity, but yeah.
Yeah, you could bring in another MCP server and control a different cloud provider altogether. Plus, in the hybrid environment, if you have your resources in Azure Arc, you'd be able to also manage them and query them. Ultimately, it's just the way you provide SRE agent access to these tools to interact with them or fetch data from them. And MCP is one such way.
Yep. Yeah. API key, whatever it might be that we support or whatever that thing is. And you have a lot of flexibility. And then not to forget the Python code interpreter. You can, wire up whatever you want. It's like full code. So,
yeah, cool. Now I was the most common question about costs. So it's a two-part answer. We have a fixed cost and it's kind of billed probably $300 a month. I'm not quite sure. And then there's something called action meters. It's an agentic unit. So we encapsulate your token usage into agentic units, and there's a meter for the agentic action units. And the details are there in the blog and the billing website. We can drop the links for that.
There's an interesting question. Will it support storage account as a telemetry source? So SRE Agent has kubectl and AZCLI command, like full support for all of the Azure resources. And so if you have written it in such a way that it's just going there, sure. You might have to either create like a, like again, Python code interpreter type thing where it can deterministically do it, or you can literally just have instructions inside of your response plan or, part of the memory that you create with the agent and just say like, hey, do this thing. Or you can even have it in your scheduled task if you want to basically say like, hey, in a scheduled task, run this thing. And you don't have to be any more specific other than just like give it some commands. And the best part is you can just chat with it and say like, help me make a scheduled task to query my storage account every 2 hours and look for, errors, right? So you don't have to work very hard. You just have to have a good idea and just kind of work with it and then productize it in one of those modalities that makes sense to you as far as a feature set that we're shipping.
Great question. All right. About data residence and data processing. Dalibor is a security and privacy expert on my team. So Dalibor, over to you on that.
Yeah, so the simple answer to that is it's an Azure service. And so you basically can get EUDB compliant or we're expanding our regions as we go to GA and beyond. We're going to have more regions. And so we have EUDB support. US is covered. And I think we have some presence in Asia. And so you will have that. We do have two model providers. So we have Anthropic and we have OpenAI. And so OpenAI, Azure OpenAI specifically, has, I think, global presence. And I think Anthropic, as of like a month ago, didn't have EUDB compliant endpoints. And so we give you a choice when it comes to model provider, if that's just not acceptable for your business, to not use that model provider. But yeah, we definitely make sure that's handled.
Cool. Two questions I'll take next together. So how do you do root cause analysis and distinguish between coincidental code changes and all of that, right? So the coolest thing of what Dalibor showed, we provide SRE Agent context of the telemetry, deployments, resource groups, and source code. So we are able to marry all of these things before we come out with an answer. We do a deep investigation, look at all of these contexts, and that's when we are able to come with a conclusion. We have been using SRE Agent for SRE Agent. So we've deployed our own version of our own instance of Azure SRE Agent and given it access to our telemetry and our product source code. And almost 95% of the time when you chat with it, it gives you an accurate answer. And the rest 5 or 10% of the time, if you prod it enough, it is able to go and look at it deeper. Now, like AI is constantly learning, right? So as and when you prod it and you tell it, oh, did you check that particular piece? Did you investigate that particular area? It's going to learn that. It's going to store that as knowledge. Next time when that same issue occurs, it has that knowledge now. So it's not going to miss that point going forward. So the 95% will eventually become 99%.
Yeah, and just to build on that, it's basically you start with the onboarding flow, and what we're trying to articulate to go back to that initial one is like there's the two pillars that make any product's reality, which is the source code. That's the most important. And then the telemetry that you emit. The telemetry obviously is not perfect because we're not perfect and we don't write all the things and we don't anticipate it. And so having both of those things where the logic of the agent and the model, especially as they get smarter, it can kind of grok those things. And as you grok those things and you respond to incidents, as you chat with it, as it creates those memory points, we are starting to save that stuff. And so if you've used like Copilot, CLI, VS Code, and a lot of these other ones, you have these session concepts. And so the SRE agent has a session. The nice thing about it is it's durable, right? The SRE agent, the instance of it is your team's knowledge versus like, when you think about it from a developer experience perspective, everybody's session is generally speaking on your machine, and it's sort of ephemeral, or it's specific to you and you really can't share it very easily. And I know we're in Microsoft making strides on that, but the SRE agent is built knowing that an SRE as like a human SRE, it's like accumulating those weird gotchas, right? Those weird tribal knowledges, that weird incident that you solved that like, you set it and forget it. Like the nice thing about that is, in the past, like a human would have to write a troubleshooting guide, then they would have to like deal with that troubleshooting guide. And if they have to update it, if they couldn't fix it, and there's all sorts of like weird things that suck as, being like a software engineer running a service. The nice thing about the SRE agent, to what Shamir is saying, is as it does these things, we're trying to architect it so that knowledge stays fresh, that it forgets things that are bad, that it remembers things that are good, and that it does it in a way that is useful going forward. And so it's all of those things that we've just suffered through for like, Shamir and I have been doing this for way too long. It's just, you find that this is like where the part of running a service that isn't fun, and we're really like internally just trying to make all that go away for us and for all of you as well. And that's kind of how I would frame that, how it knows how to do it. It doesn't always get it perfect, but it gets better. Just like an on-call person, as you do the on-call rotation for anything, you eventually get that scar tissue that you know where to look.
Right. Yeah. Another question I'd like to take is, can incidents be connected to ServiceNow? Of course, we support PagerDuty, ServiceNow, and Azure Monitor out of the box, and more providers will come as in based on customer demand. Another thing to point out here, we talked about really complex stuff here. Right? We're talking about Azure resources or cloud resources. We are talking about source code. We're talking about MCP tools and all of that stuff to be able to manage your toil. But the key ingredient here is it is not just that toil. Your toil could be as simple as like, how do I respond to these frequent customer requests about probably, how do I get a new laptop, right? That's nothing to do with Azure or any other resource, right? But if you provided the right set of knowledge and you connected it to your ServiceNow system, then that ticket could also be automatically answered by the SRE agent. And like I said, we are having browser use in research preview. And what you could also do is trigger the SRE agent to, this particular user needs a new laptop. You could ask the SRE agent to check the validity of the existing laptop, whether that user is eligible or not. And based on that, go ahead and fill a form for the user and then send an email or a Teams notification saying that a new laptop request has been accepted or denied. Here is a tracking number. So that's all possible. You could also use the SRE agent probably for processing your emails and responding to your manager if you want to. But I'm not saying that you have to use it for that, but you could, right? Because it's the generic purpose agent that we provide platform for you to use and extend the way you like.
Yeah, and I'll just double down on that one because it's sort of interesting as far as like stretching the definition of SRE, right? And the platform itself. So to get ready for GA, one of the things that Microsoft internally has to do, we have to do privacy reviews, we have to do security reviews, and we have to do RAI reviews, responsible AI reviews. And so, as you can imagine, it's process heavy. Like there's documents that have so many links and so many deep, like really, really deep things that you have to do that it's just like very hard to just rock in one sitting, right? And so I've done it several times before AI was really useful or mature enough. The models were reliable enough. But for this particular, and you'll see it in our blogs, but for this particular GA moment, I really wanted to make sure that it actually did something complicated. And so I did our privacy review. It's probably, I don't know, there's about 18 different steps, and each one of them has like probably 10 different documents with this complicated matrix of like, if this, then that, and then this, and this, and this, and this. And so I just actually went and opened up SRE Agent, who had a browser use. And I literally said, go look at our previous review, figure out how to what we did and what we didn't. And I need you to update it for this GA status. And this is the difference. It clicked through the links. It filled out the form. It went in and marked the data that was in our test subscriptions as out of scope for GDPR. It did all this stuff. And I just literally I took and recorded my screen because I didn't think my team would believe me. And so I just literally left the screen. I went to lunch. I came back. I watched it do all this stuff. It got the form filled out. It had a couple of weird things. I just kind of prodded it and said, hey, do this, do this. I reviewed it. I sat down with our privacy champ. We went through with the actual privacy and he approved it. But I was like, okay, so I did this crazy thing where I had SRE Agent go through the forms, look at our old stuff and updated all these things and it cleaned up all this stuff. And he was like, yeah, that's good. I will sign off on it. And it's just like, we need to scale this. So it's not just keep my site going. It could be to what Shamir said,
right.
My email, but it could be something really ornery, like process heavy stuff where you just need an extra brain. And yeah, you can do that with, for example, many other AI solutions. But the problem with these kind of one-off things is it's never saved as actual institutional knowledge because this realistically should be part of the source code, right? This should be durable in some way. So the next time we do it, we can build on that, right? And that's the thing that I love about this product is that it has that shared knowledge that it's a durable thing. It's not just some ephemeral thing that it's just oh, I did it once and this terrible experience is gone because it's process heavy, but now it's actually something we could build on next time.
Yeah, Dalibor, we are kind of on time now. So I'll just wrap up with two more interesting levels of Inception. The presentation deck that you saw today was totally built by the SRE agent. I didn't give it any prompts. I just told that we have a GA live stream happening tomorrow and use your knowledge to build this deck for me. And it built that entire deck without any editing. And another level of Inception is many of the exceptions and the errors that arise in telemetry for the SRE agent product, we have scheduled task configure that looks at that and automatically checks in code to our repo that engineers review and merge. So with that, I don't know if you have any more time left. Can we take some more questions, Anna? All right. Anna says, yes, we can run some more questions. So do you want to take a couple, Dalibor?
Yeah, I'd love to. All of you were generous enough with your time to be here, so we'd love to answer as many as we can. Let's see, which ones haven't we answered? We had another question about agent to agent. MCP and the triggers is what we can do right now, so you can have value and unblock yourself. We are looking at A2A. Let's see here. Will one agent work for multiple tenants? So if your definition of tenants is like an Azure tenant, so for example, we have Microsoft.com and maybe I have Bob.com or whatever. No, it's single tenant. So the SRE agent is an Azure resource that's single tenanted, meaning it's there. But can you connect to things outside of Microsoft? That was sort of a question that we answered. If that's the case, yes, you can connect with other cloud providers, even on-prem, because again, it can run code and you can connect to other things.
Cool. Right. Let's see if there's anything else that we didn't answer. Seems like we got to almost every question out there.
Yeah. Man, can I use SRE Agent integrated with XSOR? If so, how? So I don't know what XSOR is. Do you know what that one is, Shamir?
No, I haven't heard about it.
So depending on what it is, if there's an API or an MCP server, just kind of sound like a broken record, I apologize, but the answer is pretty standard at that point. If you can access it with code, you can access with the SRE agent.
Right. I guess that's pretty much what we had for today. Thank you for joining. And yeah, happy to answer questions offline. So feel free to keep them coming. We will look at the LinkedIn or the YouTube channels.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining, and thanks again to our speakers. This session is a part of a series. To register for future shows and watch past episodes on demand, you can follow the link on the screen or in the chat. We're always looking to improve our sessions and your experience. If you have any feedback for us, we would love to hear what you have to say. You can find that link on the screen or in the chat. And we'll see you at the next one.